Growing up, I spent a lot of time at my grandparents' house, my mom's parents. And it was sort of a childlike heaven there in upstate New York on a mountain near my mom and dad's house. And it was surrounded by the pine forest that just has this unique upstate New York smell to it. When I would go there, we would walk through the woods and that pine smell would be all around us. And we would spend a lot of time in the fall, especially in the front yard, chopping wood to fill their woodshed. And that smell of freshly chopped wood as we spent the entire day chopping or feeding the wood through the wood chopping machine and then stacking it meticulously so there'd be enough wood to last for the whole winter long. Because inside their house, there was always a distinct smell of wood smoke because they heated their house with this giant potbelly stove. And it would sort of permeate throughout the house, even though it was going mostly out the chimney. But that unique smell. Smells have a way of transporting us through time, across the world, just by smell. Now, you probably have your own smell memories unique to you, smells that can take you back with just a whiff. And this season of Advent and Christmas is filled with these sorts of smells. Pine and cinnamon and gingerbread, and perhaps peppermint or spiced cider. Whatever those smells are, smells that make us feel warm and cozy and conjure up images of decorating the tree, making cookies, getting ready for Christmas. But if you stop and think about it, these smells actually have nothing to do with the very first Christmas. Now, if we go with the story that we all know and love, we should be lighting candles that smell of hay, and perhaps that unique barn stable smell where the animals have been sleeping. No, you don't have those candles? No? It's not quite the same warm, fuzzy about those smells. But we can imagine them, right? Now, we can even imagine the smell of a sweet newborn baby. And sometimes that is a sweet smell, and sometimes less than a sweet smell that goes with the newborn baby, if you know what I mean. So neither gingerbread, nor pine, nor hay, or stinky animals really get us to the focus of Advent and Christmas, though. Because while these are the smells that we can associate with the season, it doesn't really capture the underlying meaning of this season. It's a time of hope. It's a time of promise. It's about the coming peace. That is what we are waiting for. That is what we are anxiously waiting for. And yes, we're counting down the days to the birth of Jesus, but it's really waiting for God's signs of hope. God's promise to walk with us and among us. God's promise of a world where peace reigns. Signs that we know to be true with the birth of Jesus, signs that we continue to wait for in our world, to wait for the realm of God to reign. This morning, Barbara read for us the words from the prophet Isaiah and words that we're actually going to read each week this season. And these words were written in a time of devastation. When kings were corrupt, when they were about to embark on neighboring countries taking over the country, when they're getting ready for the reign of King Hezekiah, one of the better kings, if you will, of the time, who would rule as a young child. And we heard the song of Zechariah, father of John the Baptist, who was married to Elizabeth, Mary's cousin, in that time before Jesus was born. In both of these stories, we hear of a time of darkness, of shadows, a time when things were less than perfect, a time when there is fear and uncertainty, concern and tumult, not unlike our time today. And yet, in the midst of that time, we get glimpses of hope, glimpses of promise. Did you hear it? We will see a great light. There shall be endless peace. Justice will be upheld. We will serve without fear. Guide our feet on the way of peace. So even when surrounded by corruption, by fear, by shadows and uncertainty, there is promise of light and peace and justice and living without fear. There is that promise then, there is that promise now. But first, we wait. And that waiting is the really hard part. Now, when we hear those familiar words from Isaiah, words made familiar in Handel's Messiah, we hear about the Prince of Peace. But this was not your average, everyday, passive prince. This is talking about an active, real-life prince that was working hard to bring peace to the land. And when we hear Zechariah tell us about John the Baptist, who is preparing the way for Jesus, the dawn will break and the world will be changed, we hear. But for those of us that know the story, we know that the story of John the Baptist comes with pain and heartbreak and eventually death for the one who prepares the way for Jesus. Through it all, in this time of Isaiah, in the time of Zechariah, and today, hope is renewed. Peace is expected. Promise is anticipated. Frederick Buechner says this about Advent, and I just love this quote. What is coming upon the world is the light of the world. It is Christ. That is the comfort of it. The challenge of it is that it has not come yet. Only the hope for it has come, only the longing for it. In the meantime, we are in the dark, and the dark, God knows, is also in us. We watch and we wait for a holiness to heal us and hallow us, to liberate us from the dark. Advent is like the hush in a theater, just before the curtain rises. It is like the hazy ring around the winter moon that means the coming of snow, which will turn the night to silver soon. But for the time being, our time, darkness is where we are. We are in the midst of the challenging time of waiting. But it is not a passive waiting, it is an active waiting, working to bring God's hope and peace and joy and love and promise to our world. We actively wait so that we don't fall asleep and miss God's presence among us. We actively wait so that we are ready. We actively wait knowing that the darkness and shadows that surround us are not the end of the story. So while we might enjoy the smells of the season that surround us, and I invite you to stop at the table out in the narthex to enjoy some smells, the smells of cinnamon and pine and gingerbread, I invite us to be actively looking for the real smells of the season, the smells of hope and the smells of promise, the smell of fresh rain that nourishes our land, the sweet smells of babies that bring joy, perhaps the smell of coffee that you buy for the stranger behind you in line, the smell of a meal made for refugees seeking new life, free from violence and fear, the smell of candles lit to remember those who have died of HIV/AIDS on World AIDS Day. Those are the smells of the season. The smells of hope, the smells of promise. These are smells that propel us to look forward, not just backward with nostalgia. So this Advent, let's be on the lookout for them, for hope and peace and promise in this season. Amen.